Lahore, Pakistan. This story begins not with a body, but with a letter. On the 2nd of December, 1999, that letter arrived. The journalist who opened it expected a routine press release, perhaps a tip on some minor political scandal. He unfolded the paper inside. The handwriting was neat, almost elegant. His eyes scanned the first line. He paused. He read it again, his casual demeanor dissolving into a mask of confusion. The letter was a confession so monstrous, so detailed in its depravity, that it felt like the ravings of a madman. But it was written with a chilling, clinical clarity. I am the killer of 100 children. I have abused them and dissolved their bodies in acid. I have left the evidence at my house. The address is enclosed. The letter included a map, hand-drawn, leading to a specific address on Ravi Road. Shaken, the journalist contacted the police chief. The initial reaction was deep skepticism, but the letter's eerie certainty was impossible to ignore. A small team of officers was quietly dispatched. The journalist, his heart pounding with a mixture of terror and professional duty, insisted on going with them. The moment they stepped inside, they were hit by a wall of stench, the overpowering, acrid smell of chemicals and decay. In the main room stood 2 large, blue industrial vats. When an officer peered inside, he recoiled in horror. Floating in the corrosive liquid were the partially dissolved remains of human bodies. The entire house was a tomb. This was not the scene of a madman's chaos. It was the workshop of a methodical monster. The letter had been real. The police had found their evidence. And in the diary, they found the killer's name, written proudly on the first page. The faceless horror that had just gripped the city now had a name: Javed Iqbal. But who was this man? As investigators launched a frantic, nationwide manhunt, they tried to build a profile. Javed Iqbal Mughal was not a shadowy figure from the slums. Born in 1956 to a prosperous business family, he was the 6th of 8 children, described as a pampered child. He attended college and later started his own steel recasting business. To his neighbors, he was a reasonably well-off, if somewhat reclusive, man. But his life was a series of failures and simmering resentments. His businesses crumbled. For years, allegations of abusing young boys had trailed him, but he always managed to evade serious consequences. The turning point, according to his own twisted narrative, came when he was arrested and allegedly brutalized by police. He claimed the shame of this incident caused his devout mother to suffer a fatal heart attack. In that moment, he would later claim a seed of grotesque revenge was planted in his mind. With the killer identified, the search for Javed Iqbal consumed Pakistan. Panic gripped the country. Parents kept their children indoors. The police were under immense pressure, hunting a man who had not only committed unthinkable crimes, but had announced them to the world. Then, on the 30th of December, the manhunt came to a stunning and bizarre conclusion. He wasn't captured in a dramatic raid. He simply walked, calm and composed, back into the offices of the very newspaper he had sent his confession to, and announced to the stunned staff I am Javed Iqbal, and I am here to surrender. He claimed he could have easily fled the country, but chose to surrender to ensure his story was told correctly. He was not just a killer, he was the author of his own horrific legacy, and he had come to claim credit, directing the final scene of his macabre play. In custody, the full, sickening scope of his operation was revealed. He did not act alone. His accomplices were 3 teenage boys. But this was no criminal gang. The boys, named Nadim, Sabir, and a 3-year-old, also named Javed, were his previous victims. He had abused, manipulated, and coerced them into helping him lure other children to their doom, a final, cruel layer of his depravity, turning victims into unwilling participants. The trial of Javed Iqbal was a national spectacle. The evidence was irrefutable. His confession, his diary, the remains it was, an open and shut case. On the 16th of March, 2000, he was found guilty. But it was the sentence, delivered by Judge Allah Bakhshranja, that sent shockwaves around the world. The judge, channeling the raw fury of a wounded nation, ordered that Javed Iqbal be executed in front of the parents of his victims. He was to be publicly strangled with the same steel chain he used. His body was then to be cut into 100 pieces, one for each child he murdered, and those pieces were to be dissolved in a vat of acid, just as he had done to them. It sparked a fierce global debate. Is this justice, or is it state-sanctioned barbarism? The world would never find out. Before the sentence could be appealed or carried out, on the 10th of October, 2001, Javed Iqbal and one of his accomplices were found dead in their shared cell. The official cause of death was ruled a double suicide, but the public remained skeptical. Had he been silenced? Had someone else enacted their own form of justice? It was the final, unanswered question. In a case full of them, the man was gone. But the question that haunts us is, why? To understand Javed Iqbal's actions is to peer into the abyss of a profoundly disordered mind. This was never truly about revenge for his mother. That was a grandiose narrative he constructed to justify his pre-existing predatory urges. This was about psychopathic control, the meticulous record-keeping, the photographs on the wall, the diary. These were not just trophies. They were artifacts of a megalomaniac who saw his victims not as human beings, but as objects in his collection. His decision to confess via letter and surrender at a newspaper office was not an act of conscience. It was an act of ultimate narcissistic rage. He needed to control the narrative from beginning to end, to force the world to look at him and acknowledge his terrible power. Javed Iqbal was a monster. His case exposed the deep vulnerability of children living in the margins and forced a painful national conversation that continues to this day. But the story of the house on Ravi Road should not be his story. It is the story of the 100 boys he stole from the world. They were not just a number. Their names may be lost to many, but their memory serves as a permanent, haunting call to action. A demand that we never again allow the most innocent among us to be so tragically invisible.